Fantasy, you're in the whole 6010. Focus, fantasy, fantasy focus.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus, presented by Boost Mobile. My name is Daniel Dopp, here with Stephania Bell and Field Yates, but I can only see one of you today. I came in today a little bit injured for what it's worth.
What's going on right now?
I was going to say, you look like you're crying, and, you know, I'm the one who should be crying about my 49ers.
Oh,
but
Stephania. Yeah, I had a bye week this week. This morning, we've got two young pups at home, Rosie and I do. So our dogs, I don't know if this happens to you guys, if you let your dog sleep in the bed with you or if they've got to sleep in a crate. But
my dog has his own room.
Okay.
No,
Oh, wow. Wow.
No,
All right.
he's got-
A palatial estate.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Exactly. River, one of our pups, decided like she knows when the alarm is about to go off. She basically has become the alarm clock at this point. So like I roll over in bed, I feel her like crawling up towards the top of the bed. She's getting ready to be like, Mom and Dad, it's time to get up. And I start feeling that tail go whack, 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 whack. Because she knows that we're gonna like start to get up. So I turn over and I look at her, and as soon as I open my eyes,
Scratch.
bam, paw right to the face. So
Oh.
you're sort of blurry. Fields, you're perfectly clear.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it through today's show, but we got two of us banged up today. Stefania, you're going to have to carry the load in this one.
What else is new?
My heart is broken. So I'm also in
All
pain
three of us
today.
are banged up.
I
When
know.
Daniel said he could only see one of us to begin the show, I didn't know if that was a colorblind reference. Like, if
No.
there are
Oh,
certain
yeah,
colors
I
that
heard
don't
about the
like hit
test.
the what do you call these? The retinas.
Yeah.
And others.
Rods and cones. I don't have one of the things that I'm.
You also could have just mentioned the retinas of retina. River started George Pickens in fantasy last night.
it's
That was what
brutal.
the paw was actually for. And I got to say something real quick, and we can address this furthermore throughout the week. But, you know, Mike Clay gives me, the dad with two kids, 2 and under, a lot of flack for the fact that, you know, something every once in a while during a primetime game, I got a very comfy couch.
Yep.
I'll fall asleep during the game. You know, that alarm clock, my kids, like your dog, comes early in the morning.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Long days here.
Oh, yes.
In the Yates household. And so last night, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to grind through it. Game gets late an hour and a half, and I'm like, crap, I'm still going to grind through it. We got a group thread, the 4 of us.
We did.
And you guys, heavy volume in the group thread.
We were heavy
Yeah.
volume.
Heavy volume.
We were
And
trying
I
to keep
said-
each other awake.
You know what I said? I said, I'm going to refrain. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it to the end of the game, and I'm going to engage the group thread then and see how many are left standing. And Mike, who just loves to throw stones at me.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who ever, and by the way, Mike is not that far removed from being a dad of 2 young girls himself.
Yep.
Peeps, crickets, 12:51 a.m. I'm just sitting there on an island by myself. So, Mike, I hope you enjoyed your beauty rest. Must be nice. Meanwhile, I'm working on like 4.5 hours of sleep, and I showed up for the show today, Mike.
That's right.
So reconsider whether you should be talking smack about my occasional propensity for falling asleep during a primetime game.
I think Mike has the least excuse of all of us.
I agree.
Because really, the rest of us, we were working. We were preparing for a show.
Exactly.
Correct.
And so I was like, I'm just going to take a little cat nap because I think. Then I woke up, you know, to find out, I better go catch the highlights of that.
Yes,
fourth
I should
quarter.
go back. Yeah, shout out to anybody, Field, you included, that made it to the end of that game, because after that massive delay, I mean, what time did it end? Like 12?
Like 12:53.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's
was
brutal.
crazy.
12:53 East Coast time, obviously. So was that 9:53?
Never wanted to be a citizen of like somewhere on the West Coast
Oh,
more of my life
please.
than I was.
Oh,
was
listen.
amazing.
We get spoiled, and I think Nina Kimes tweeted something to that effect last night of like the best time. Like she had a little meme of the guy looking through the shade, like you know, smiling. And
Oh, the
about
best time zone.
because of being the best time
Not
zone
even
for all
close.
of football.
It really is. Yeah.
I'm with you on that one.
And by the way, when we're done, you need to go get that looked at. I'm
Probably
a little
do.
concerned about the eye.
Yeah, well, I'm
As an
concerned about
injury
it too.
person here.
They gave me some drops and makeup, so
Would
hopefully
you like
we're
me to
gonna be
accompany
okay.
you to the doctor? I've done that before.
This is part of the role, Stefania.
Let me
This is
tell
how
you
it
what.
works.
There's nobody you'd rather go to the hospital. I don't know what you would go to for a swollen eye. Maybe
I have no
Uh,
idea.
well,
what do you call the eye doctor? An
ophthalmologist.
Ophthalmologist? Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. Well, you're already smarter than I am, Stefania. We'll check it out after the show, but I'm going to play through the pain. And with that being said, let's talk about our Week 5 recap. Start with the game of the week here, my friends. Ravens and Bengals. I just want to say to our producer Tyler upstairs,
Oh, I
the
feel so
Bengals fans,
bad.
just earmuffs for the rest of this part of the show, all right?
So bad. They're playing so well on offense,
I
and they
know.
can't stop anything on defense.
Nope.
right Now, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, tough for everybody to stop.
Right.
But good Lord, you had this game wrapped up. I just can't get over a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. Moreover, what are we doing, coaches, now in the NFL? The Texans, it worked out for them. But if you have a kicker, I get it. We kick the ball longer and more accurately than we have ever before in NFL history. But the Bengals have the ball in overtime with the chance to win with the next score. And they have the ball at the 35-yard line. And they just run 3 predictable up-the-gut runs. And then Evan McPherson ends up missing the field goal after the holder botched the hold.
Yep.
And I'm thinking to myself, I get it. With a good hold, maybe he makes that kick. But can we show a bit more aggression? Like, wouldn't you feel a little bit more comfortable with a 42-yard attempt as opposed to a 53-yard attempt?
With some confidence
Especially
in
when their offense had been rolling the whole game.
Yeah,
like,
Joe Burrow
why
had
not be more
touchdowns.
aggressive? Like, I don't understand why everybody gets conservative at the very end. Like, now we're going to get conservative, and really it had been working. A couple players not happy about that either, the disparity between the offense and the defense and how
tell me
they're
about it.
playing. So, that's going to be a point of conversation. But can I just say that I thought this was the best Joe Burrow has looked?
Clearly.
To me, and we talked a little bit about it on Fantasy Football Now, and I said, the only question that will hang out there for a while is just volume, and as we're now through 5 weeks of the season, when we get to week 10, 12, and if he's still holding up and looks like this, then everything that was a concern is gone. But as far as his effectiveness and being able to show volume within the game and where he was placing the ball, I thought it was the best he's looked all season. One of the things I'm still curious about is why he's on the injury report every single week.
Every week.
But once we get an answer to that question, I think if it's even just to help him stay loose or do what he needs to be effective, those questions have been answered for me.
Yeah, I would say this too. That bad Bengals defense is a good thing for Joe Burrow in the passing game because it feels like every week they're playing shootouts now, right? And this is a good Ravens defense. So they move the football very effectively against a very good Ravens defense. Joe Burrow, quarterback 2 right now in the week behind only Kirk Chains, baby. Kirk Cousins with those 509 passing yards on Thursday night. Currently in that quarterback 1 spot. I think he'll hold on to it because of the fact that it's the Chiefs and the Saints playing tonight. But Jamar Chase, quietly, is the highest scoring wide receiver in all of fantasy football now for the season. Now, a lot of that came yesterday. 41.3 points, 10 catches, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. To me, the most important play of the game for Jamar Chase was that 70-yard touchdown catch, which was caught behind the line of scrimmage. And it reminded me of when, as a rookie against the Chiefs, he just zoomed through that Chiefs defense, and it was like, I am the best player on the field right now. Nobody else has an answer for me. Vintage Chase yesterday, and I don't know if you can attribute the slow start that Jamar Chase had 6 catches for 62 yards in week 1 solely to the fact that he missed a ton of training camp. But this offense is humming right now, and it's not just him.
T. Higgins
Higgins,
awesome.
too. How awesome did he look yesterday?
Dude, he looked fantastic. And this is part of you being able to see it feels like this offense get back on track. T. Higgins out the first 2 weeks as well. And it looks like everyone in this offense has finally started to hit their stride with everything that you guys have talked about.
How about T's target share so far?
Dude, it's been fantastic, Fields.
30 targets in 3 games. So a 33.3% target share over the past 2 weeks for T. Higgins. That's tied for 3rd most in the NFL with Wan'Dale Robinson. So T. Higgins, very much a prominent part of this passing offense. I think there's some stickiness to this because the defense is just so bad. Zach Moss, was it Zach Moss or Chase Brown? One of them left the game.
Zach Moss left late, in the 4th.
Late, came back, and then luckily he was maybe banged up late once again. Early indications are that it's not serious.
Is that why, can I ask this? Because over the last 2 weeks, and it was pretty late. I think there was only 3 minutes left in the 4th quarter by the time that Zach Moss left. But over the last 2 weeks, Chase Brown has absolutely closed the gap between what him and Zach Moss were. We thought it was the Zach Moss show to start the season. Now, Chase Brown over the last 2 weeks, more touches, more rushing yards by a wide margin over Zach Moss. More than twice as much yards after first contact, more scrimmage yards, more touchdowns. And he's also getting carries inside the 5. Is this a spot where we're kind of seeing that gap close, and this is something that is probably going to continue on for this offense?
I think it's going to continue to close to 50% for each of them. I do think there's a possibility, though, that Zach Moss hangs on to value because he's, A, not playing terrible, but B, there are certain things that Zach Moss is a specialist in, like pass protection, like he's good on 3rd down because of his pass protection skills and some of his pass catching skills. I don't think he evaporates into obscurity entirely, but it wouldn't surprise me if we are much closer to a 50-50 split compared to there was a time where in back-to-back weeks, Zach Moss played 87 and 80% of the snaps, 13 and 20% of the snaps for Chase Brown. And the other important piece of context I'll remind from last week is that it's just these two.
Yeah.
The only 2 running backs that play. It's not like if Zach Moss is playing if Chase Brown's playing 52% of the snaps one week, Zach Moss might be down to 23 because there's a third running back in the mix. If there are 100 snaps available, almost all of them are going to go to either Zach Brown, Zach Moss, or Chase Brown. Zach Brown, respect, love your music.
Great band.
I've been to a handful of your concerts, and they always bring the noise. So that was a Freudian slip. But also, I love paying homage to Zach Brown.
That's a crappy band I've heard of for what it's worth.
Not crappy. Nothing crappy about Zach
You're right.
Brown.
You're right. On the other side, let's talk about the Ravens real quickly. Lamar is just a freaking magician. I mean,
Well, Lamar proved that he can do it both ways, right? That he could win with his legs or win with his arm. And yesterday it was like, okay, you want me to throw? I'm going to throw.
Yep.
I'm
I'm even going to throw one pass.
Yeah.
Just one to Mark Andrews to get us there.
Yes. So I'll get there. I do want to say
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But when the first one happened,
Oh, my God.
it's like we were thrilled with that.
The alarm bells went off. Yeah.
Lamar looked exactly like you would expect him to look. Derrick Henry, 7th touchdown of the season. That bold prediction that we had of him potentially hitting 20 rushing touchdowns. Well, I mean, I'd like to share it with everybody on the show.
When you make the prediction, you get to enjoy, the fruits of your labor. Daniel thought that Derrick Henry could have 20 touchdowns this season, which he had never done before.
Nope.
And he is very much
7
on
through
his
5 games right now.
a
So
touchdown
he's-
in every single game. So bravo to Daniel. If I can sort of clap. here with
Appreciate
the
that.
sling,
Appreciate
but
that.
Starting Wednesday, I'll be able to clap a lot easier. So shout out to you.
But yeah, Mark Andrews finally leads the tight end room in targets here and still gets outscored in fantasy points by Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. How does this happen? I mean, Field, here's my question.
Yeah, this is great.
This production doesn't move the needle enough for me on Mark Andrews for him to be a starter for me yet, but I am at least excited with him on my bench to see that he at least got a little bit involved in the pass.
Are you though?
I only have one Mark Andrews share this year, and it's a team in which I managed to grab Tucker Kraft early on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
So to me, my brain has kind of blocked out the do I need to agonize over Mark Andrews right now? I don't know if this is allowed. You could probably customize this in the ESPN scoring system. We got a great producer here at ESPN named Aaron Ross, who I give all the credit for this nickname. He coined Charlie Kolar fake Mark Andrews because he kind of looks like him.
He was.
The
He
numbers
faked
are
me out
one digit
yesterday.
apart. Yes, and the helmet's similar, the build's comparable.
Like the Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison.
Right.
thing we
Yes.
had in Minnesota.
So is there a way that you can combine Charlie Kolar
They're all one person.
and Mark Andrews into one person?
That would be
Because that
ideal.
might be a starting tight end.
There you go. You'd finally have one here.
And by the way, Kolar, this is a guy who, some pedigree, 4th-round pick a few years ago from Iowa State. I want to say Kolar was a first-team All-American or maybe even a Mackey Award finalist. So it's not like him having a skill set is totally out of nowhere. It's just when you have 3 tight ends, you have none. Sometimes, as we know in the NFL, when you have 1 tight end, you still have none because nobody can throw the football to the tight end anymore. So it's good that Mark Andrews has a pulse. I'm like Daniel, though. I'm not rushing to get Mark Andrews back into my lineup.
Yeah. It's just nice to see him just get involved and be out there on the field.
Yeah.
We love to be able to see that. All right, let's talk about Cowboys and Steelers. Field, I made it about 3/4 of the way through this game. I had to watch the rest of it on YouTube this morning. But I saw at the end of the game, holy smokes, Dak Prescott leading a touchdown drive, finding Jalen Tolbert, gets in the end zone. We mentioned Jalen Tolbert on Fantasy Football Now yesterday as a deep league consideration with Brandon Cooks going to be out for the next little bit.
Yeah, I have loved him since I saw him in training camp. I actually thought last year he'd start to have a bigger role. But this year, for sure, I mean, Dak does trust him. And I'm happy to say that I had him last night to help me with the War Room League matchup.
Nice,
I thought it was
Stephania.
coming. It was just he did help. It was that final touchdown at the end that
Yeah.
really secured things. But I think Jalen Tolbert is reliable for Dak. And I like him as a flex play that's going to deliver like this. I think it'll be spotty at times, but he is reliable for Dak.
Yeah, number 3 pass catcher in this offense behind CD and Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, but another day of a quiet CD night. As we know, when the Cowboys play somebody good, CD is going to get the attention of that top corner, so that can help the complementary receivers a bit. And we have a clear-cut back in the Cowboys' backfield. It's not close.
Not even
It's
close.
Rico Dowdle. It's Zeke Elliott is just not a factor anymore. Hardly played last night. Rico currently running back 3 for the week, 20 carries, 87 yards. I don't believe that the Cowboys' strategy this offseason was correct. I would have drafted a running back at some point with one of their picks. At the same time, I do think that Rico Dowdle can scrape by enough that they're not going to do something else to address that position for the rest of this season. So Dowdle is probably going to cling to, honestly, maybe closer to top 20 back value just because we've seen so many injuries. and so many disappointments that you trend up for a couple of weeks in a row, and you might enter the top 20 in Week 6 rankings.
Yeah, I mean, next week it's the Detroit Lions, and we'll figure out what that looks like for Rico Dowdle, but he clearly is the guy in this offense without question.
I got to tell you one thing here. A little bit frustrated last night watching that game. Again, some of us watched the game in
The whole game.
Right? Yeah, must be nice. George Pickens notably ran the third most snaps of all Steelers wide receivers. After the game, and take this for what it's worth, Mike Tomlin. I was stayed up for the post-game press conference.
Oh, of course you did, Field.
Mike, no, I was asleep for that.
I watched it this morning. For what it's worth.
I just read online about it. But Mike Tomlin said after the game, this was snap management. It was not like punishment or doghouse or whatever. So, and he drew a parallel to Cam Hayward, who, legendary Steeler team captain, second best or whatever. TJ Watt's the best player in the defense. Somebody is the second best player. Maybe it's Cam Hayward. He also had his snaps managed last night. I don't know if I entirely buy that. George Pickens had a dumb play last night. Grabbing the face mask. I mean, with Pickens, maturity has been a question that's been called into has been.
We've talked about this in the past. Yeah,
so he's got to be reliable, not just talented. But the role shrinking in a low volume passing offense that really isn't that effective through the air so far. A little bit scary for George Pickens and Najee. Unfortunately, just back-to-back weeks. Like, this Cowboys run defense might be a little bit fixed. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't as bad as Devin Singletary was last week, but under 10 for Najee. We were hoping for a bigger night. That Cowboys run defense has figured some things out.
He was my start of the week. I was so bummed. I thought after that monsoon that happened, it was like, oh, they're just going to rely on the ground game. Maybe Najee can get some things going, especially with both those defensive ends out, and then they lost another guy on the defensive front last night.
Returned. It was like,
it was tough. It was not great.
Marshawn
All right,
Nealand out last night.
Let's talk about the London game really quickly. We watched this one while we were doing FF Now. Jets and the Vikings.
Like the music.
You have a British accent available.
Career day, unbelievably huge volume for Garrett Wilson. 22 targets, 13 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown, a 43% target share. But this is my thought. I just want to throw this at you guys, and you can tell me if you completely disagree with me. But this offense still doesn't look in sync. Like Garrett Wilson specifically to Aaron Rodgers, I don't think still looks the way that I would expect it to. You got those Devontae Adams rumors that are just looming over top of everyone's head. After this game, with how many fantasy points that Garrett Wilson scored, is this your chance to potentially sell high on Garrett Wilson?
Not a bad thought.
If you can.
Yeah, not a bad thought. I've got Wilson in a couple of leagues, and I had not yet processed that idea, but I will be.
It's just a thought. I mean,
armchair GMing, some trade offers.
22 targets is unsustainable. That was huge.
Everybody will think like, oh, like maybe this is on.
They finally got it figured out. Hopefully they didn't watch the game.
To the eye test, their offense is not in sync. Like you mentioned, like what they produce offensively does not ratio with the level of talent that they have.
Yeah.
And so it still feels like they have not found their way yet. And we were just one Alan Lazard touchdown shy of being able to just, drive that home to Mike that Alan Lazard's still the preferred target. Had he not dropped the pass that could have led to a score for him, then we'd probably be talking about him as Aaron Rodgers' favorite target still.
Again.
Yeah, it's an interesting question now that I think about it more, because 22 targets is ridiculous. 43% of Aaron Rodgers' throws went to Garrett Wilson yesterday, and yet it does feel like all targets are not created equally.
This is like a Wan'Dale Robinson number.
Yeah, but if they acquire Devontae Adams, like, does that help Garrett Wilson? Because the Jets will tell you that part of the struggle so far for Garrett Wilson is that everybody's just paying all the attention to him.
He can't get open.
Or does it hurt Garrett Wilson because Devontae Adams is there? He's going to command a 30% target share, right? With Aaron Rodgers, his best friend, not named Derek Carr, maybe in the entire NFL. So it's a good one for now. I'm pleased with the utilization and the output here for Garrett Wilson. And I know there's a lot of frustration on Breece Hall Island right now, guys. I don't know what to tell you, though. Like, I don't know that I can feel so crappy about Breece Hall after yesterday, despite the results. He has under 4 fantasy points, 3.8 to be specific. He played 64% of the snaps.
Yep.
If I told you that this team was going to play from behind a lot of the game, you might not be surprised that he had to only carry the football 9 times. I don't know. Like, it sucks, but this is kind of the year of a lot of top-of-the-heap running backs having lesser days so far. So Breece Hall in back-to-back weeks prior to this one was a top 13 running back and B at least 18 fantasy points. I'm going to chalk this one up to just a bad day at the office for the Jets. Offense in general.
Would you say then if you had to put this on a panic meter scale of 1 to 10, it's still low, like a 3?
Very low for me. It sucks, but
if you look at Breece Hall last year, I mean, obviously he was coming off the injury, but when he came back, he was so heavily involved in the passing game.
Yeah.
He wasn't really the dominant ball carrier until, like, in terms of ground production, until late in the season. Then it was super high at the end of the year. He hasn't really been that involved in the passing game either. So I don't know where his value really stands. The other thing is that Aaron Rodgers was injured yesterday during the game. It looked bad when it happened. It was his left. He was reaching for his back of his left leg, so he thought it might be a hamstring initially. Afterwards, it said he was dealing with a low ankle sprain, but expected to be fine for the next game. They have a bye next week.
Oh, they
I'm sorry. They don't have a bye. They should have a bye. Yeah. The Vikings have a bye.
Okay.
We'll talk about the Vikings in 1 second. I just want to correct something here. Breece Hall back-to-back tough games. Under 7 yesterday after under 4 last week. So the panic meter is probably a little bit more than I gave it credit for initially. But, still, like, I believe in the player significantly. I still think he's going to be the number 1 back in this offense. They played the Vikings. Like, that's a no-joke defense they faced yesterday. Like, there's part of me that is saying, like, I don't know, like,
they play the Bills.
Jets need to make things simple. Monday Night Football, by the way, should be a great matchup because that run defense in Buffalo has been a real problem. Cam Akers found the end zone yesterday as an example to pay sort of more credence to that thought. So I do believe that Breece Hall is due for a better bounce-back day next week.
True or false, though, Braylon Allen needs to be added on waivers on the end of benches this year? Or are you still not?
I still think he's an insurance policy.
Okay.
The Jets have far too much invested in a player who was incredible, not just last year, but prior to getting hurt as a rookie and for the first 3 weeks of this season. Like, I don't think Breece Hall is in danger of losing enough of a role that Braylon Allen has standalone value. I just don't believe that's happening.
Okay.
And if you're going to be wrong, if I'm wrong on Breece Hall, like, I'll live with that. Like, I think the guy is a supreme talent. Like, I don't have any questions about that. If a coaching decision proves me wrong later, I'll fall on the sword there. But I am not of the mind that Braylon Allen will have standalone value unless Breece Hall gets hurt.
Okay. Stephania, we did see on the other side of this with the Vikings, the 5-0 Vikings, for what it's worth, which is frustrating to me as a Lions fan. Aaron Jones, unfortunately, gets hurt in this one, did not return. What can you tell us about his injury?
All they're saying is that it was a hip injury. I mean, when it happened, he was over on the sideline then trying to stretch it out, and it looked like maybe he was going to try and come back in. He was originally listed as questionable to return. He was ruled out at the half. As we mentioned, they have a bye next week. So the hope is, I think Kevin O'Connell said that they have their fingers crossed that it'll be a short-term issue. But it's not really clear exactly what the issue is. Hopefully we get some more information in the next couple of days.
So this one is interesting because if the Vikings have a bye next week, I normally would have said go out and we'll talk more about Ty Chandler tomorrow, only rostered in 35% of leagues. But if they've got a bye,
I would take him right now tomorrow.
You would just grab him?
100%.
Just
in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah, I mean, even if you get one game out of him, that's more value than some of these waiver wire picks that we are snatching up these days. And beyond that, while he had a tough, inefficient day yesterday, Ty Chandler, important to note, 18 opportunities filling in for Aaron Jones. Myles Gaskin's the next man up. And Ty Chandler was solid down the stretch last year, filling in for, kind of a smorgasbord of backs that the Vikings relied upon last year. So I think Chandler should be added tomorrow. I don't know about sneaky ad because most people who listen and watch this show probably are pretty involved fantasy managers. But a lot of times when people go to the waiver wire, they're just going through the players with the highest projection for the following week. Of course, there will be a 0 projection for Chandler with this team on a bye. I would make him my priority ad because even if this hip injury does not cost Aaron Jones any time, and we'll see on that, still a reminder, while he has defied father time so far this season, older, aging veteran running back worth having his backup on the roster if you can afford it.
And by the way, Chandler got vultured in a sense because they gave their fullback the touchdown.
Yeah, CJ Ham. Thanks a lot for that.
So the stat line would have looked better.
It would have.
Who scored the 2 touchdowns for the Vikings yesterday? CJ Ham and Andrew Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel is the best offensive defensive player in the NFL.
Agreed.
I swear.
I think the Dolphins are regretting that one. I mean, boy, did they miss him or what? He looked fantastic yesterday. Anyway.
Dolphins won a game, though. We'll talk
All right.
about that in a bit.
Speaking of regrets, let's talk about the Panthers and the Bears. Panthers got to see firsthand where all of their draft assets went to, and it was Caleb Williams. Holy smokes.
It's awesome.
Eye test. Here's the eye test. And mind you,
progression.
it's blurry for me today, but the eye test on Caleb Williams, like, he's got all the tools. If he can have time to be able to sit back there, make this offense work, the dude looks unbelievable. 2 games, over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. The other 3 games, he's been shy of 175. But this is a guy that if he can have the opportunities field, like, I get all the reasons why he was taken number 1 overall.
Yeah, he's a really special player, and I think that one of the hard things for Caleb Williams right now, and this is unfair to these players, but I understand why we do it too. It's very natural for us on this side, but I hope that the players kind of insulate themselves from this kind of analysis, is that when you have the player taken right behind you going off for this historic start, it's, did the Bears make a mistake? Guys, stop. We're 5 games into the season. Like, before we write this player off, like, it might be worth seeing how they look. You know, Josh Allen's first 8 games looked terrible. Like, there's plenty of examples of guys who come out of the gates and don't look great. By the way, Caleb hasn't looked terrible by any stretch. You mentioned it.
No. I think
2 out of 5 games already up over 300 passing yards. By the way, over the past 2 weeks, much better against the blitz.
Yeah.
Which the teams are going to continue to rush the Bears because their offensive line's a problem. Caleb has been, if you go look at the numbers, like up over 80% completion percentage when blitzed over the past 2 weeks. Trending, like, I think he's got a chance, as we talk about quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith, who can make their way into that top 12 range for quarterbacks. I think Caleb Williams can get there as well for this reason. Caleb, like Geno, like Baker, and I would say probably definitely more so than Baker, and maybe more so than Geno as well. They're not going to design a ton of runs for him, but he's a very good athlete. He can certainly make some hay with his legs as well. So 5 carries for 34 yards yesterday. That's good, right? That's not going to win you your week good, but it's definitely enough to help augment what is already a good passing game right now.
He has had 5 carries in 4 of his 5 games, so he's at least utilizing his wheels, which is one of the things we love here in fantasy football.
Yeah, and the Bears' schedule gets really tough down the stretch. They don't play a single NFC North team until, I believe, week 11 of this year. But their next 4 games, all, in my estimation, pretty winnable.
It's
it starts with
Jacksonville. Then they have a bye.
Yep.
And then at Washington and at Arizona.
So obviously that Washington game, I think it's winnable. It's going to be tough, obviously, but that's not a secondary that scares you unless you're Deshaun Watson.
Agree. That's fair. Rest of the Bills, I'll just say this really quickly. Or
The Bears.
Rest of the Bears very
I knew what
quickly.
you meant.
DeAndre Swift.
Can't see, so
It's just,
it's
I know, it's tough
understandable.
looking down. Everything's just blurry. DeAndre Swift stays hot in this one, second week, where he had over 20 fantasy points. Didn't get it through the airfield. We had talked about how last week he had a lot of receiving game work. It was just, he got good volume in this one.
Yeah, 47 yards as a receiver, but most of that on one big play.
Yep.
But 21 carries. Roshan Johnson scored 2 short yardage touchdowns.
So bummed about that.
So DeAndre Swift could have been easily RB1. He's now RB2 for the week at 20.0 fantasy points. So not a big week for running backs just in general. Hopefully Alvin Kamara can change that tonight. But yeah, he looks good. And I do think that while Roshan Johnson definitely is going to have a role, and he's a good finisher, like at the goal line. Real life football still matters for these teams, right? It's been good to see DeAndre Swift kind of find his footing with the Bears over the past couple of weeks. Again, they draw the Jaguars in London next Sunday for the first of back-to-back Jaguars-London games.
Love that. All right, let's talk Bills and Texans. Do you want something else?
No.
All right, Bills and Texans. Another subpar week for Josh Allen, guys. Like, after 15 rushing touchdowns last year, Josh Allen has just 2 rushing touchdowns this season, and they came in week 1 for what it's worth. So it's been 4 not great rushing weeks for Josh Allen.
I think they need to think about some stuff offensively right now. So the Bills, like, they came into this season with a plan that they were going to be okay at wide receiver without Stephon Diggs. I would say the early returns suggested they would be fine. And in the past 2 games, I think it's really showed up. Yesterday, Josh was 0 for 13 on throws, 15-plus yards down the field.
Wowzers.
We did not talk about this a lot last week on Fantasy Focus, but I mentioned it yesterday both on Twitter and also on Fantasy Football Now. The idea that, like, maybe Curtis Samuel gets some action this week, right? 3 years, $24 million. How about no?
Just kidding.
How about no?
Okay, kidding.
How can they? What I'm surprised about with Curtis Samuel is that A, it's not like they've got other guys who are like playing great. B, Joe Brady was his offensive coordinator in Carolina. Like, he knows the player. This is not a situation where a team brings a guy in with zero familiarity and they kind of immediately say, like, wave the white flag. We screwed this one up. So,
what was he, 9 for 30 in this game?
9 for 30 was Josh. So the good news is, he has over 50 rushing yards. He can still do that. But I do think the Bills need to think longer and harder about maybe tapping into a little bit more of Josh's rushing ability right now. I think it stresses a defense in a way that makes short and manageable completions more manageable for Josh, who apparently is made out of brick because he took a massive hit yesterday. His head slammed the ground, Stephania, and he was back 10 seconds later.
Well, he was back. I think it was
Not literally one play.
No, he was not. It was back. He was one play, but there were things that happened in between. So he left and was cleared to return after going through an evaluation. So that's
where we're at.
I'm just saying he really is. He is. I'm not. Of course, yeah. They definitely checked him and all that. He is one tough dude. That Josh Allen. He can take some hits. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm not benching him. I'm not at a spot where I'm going to bench him, but I do just want to admit, maybe I was a year too early on my Josh Allen frustrations.
Exactly what I was thinking, Daniels, that your frustrations were a year too soon. Go back and look at the numbers last year compared to this.
I know.
2 monster weeks for Josh.
Yeah.
And then 3, I would say, very disappointing weeks. For Josh, when you're taking him that early as QB1, 20-plus fantasy points is the expectation every week.
Yep.
When he's below 15 in 3 of his first 5 weeks, 100% believe the idea of disappointment is valid this year.
Yep, you can feel that way as a fantasy manager. On the other side of this one, Stephania, I do want to ask, just with the injury to Nico Collins, you start out the game so hot, 2 for 78. That long touchdown was beautiful. I mean, this is classic Nico Collins, and then he goes into the locker room with a hamstring injury, doesn't return.
I know. Well, let's not forget he's been dealing with a hamstring issue before this, and it does make you wonder if that was an aggravation. It's not clear. This is a player who, I think he had 15.6 fantasy points before he departed, something along those lines. So imagine what his value would have been if he'd been able to stay in the game. He was added to the report last Thursday. Then he was off. It's really, this is the way soft tissue injuries work, is that you can think you're past them, and then all of a sudden you have a nice long run touchdown like that. It was unclear where it happened, but if I had to guess, it would be something, when you can reach full speed. And he did kind of slow up right before he scored.
He looked full speed for what it's worth.
He was full speed. Right. It wasn't, there was nothing glaring like a lot of times you see when guys.
He didn't grab anything.
They'll pull up sharp. So it's not exactly clear what happened. Who knows if he just felt to tighten up and they thought that's enough for now. So we'll get more on the projection side of this later, but that's
day-to-day
unfortunate. Yep.
Basically out for 3/4 of the game. So I would have, and I just want to say this for fantasy managers, if you did happen to start Tank Dell because you needed to, a little bummed that he didn't have more production given the fact that Nico Collins left so early in this one. Obviously, it's a tough game. That Houston Texans, the Texans-Bills game always feels like right now it's going to be a shootout back and forth, but I would have loved to see a little bit more from Tank Dell given the fact that he's kind of started slow as well. All right. Really quickly, can I just mention this? Where would you rank these Houston Texans uniforms? Because I loved the way the color rush uniforms looked. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, no. I do like some of the color rush uniforms this year. I think they're better than what we've seen in the past. Yeah.
I'm going to save all of my uniform enthusiasm from yesterday for those beautiful Broncos throwbacks.
I thought you were going to say the
we
Seahawks
make those
highlighter pens.
Too.
The Broncos, those were just spectacular. I want those back full time so bad. Broncos, by the way, 3-2.
We'll talk about them here in a little bit. Let's talk about Jaguars and Colts.
This is big.
Hey, Jaguars and Bengals have the same record.
Oh, gosh, that doesn't feel good. Earmuffs again, Tyler, so sorry about that.
Right, that was not a shout at Tyler. The Jaguars needed to win. I'm just happy for them that they won.
Well, thankfully, they had Tank Bigsby being able to run the football because he was absolutely unreal. 13 carries for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, that's another guy that we're going to talk about more on tomorrow's waiver wire show, someone that you might want to add. However...
I felt like this was Tank Bigsby's going to run the ball and Travis Etienne's going to catch the ball.
So I was surprised by that. I did watch the press conference afterwards where Doug Peterson was asked specifically about it. And if Tank Bigsby is going to get a bigger role moving forward. And he was like, no, Travis is our guy. Travis is our guy. That's it.
Travis has been a little bit beat up with the shoulder injury. Remember, he was out of last week's game a bunch and banged up. Who is to know? But all of a sudden, Bigsby in week 4, 7 carries for 90 yards rushing. And then all of a sudden, this week, he has the game that he had, and we're talking about him as a waiver wire pickup.
He's just played better.
Yeah.
He's just running the football a whole lot better than Travis Etienne has of late. And is there a more appropriate name than Tank for Tank Bigsby?
No.
The guy runs like a tank.
He looks like a tank.
I love it.
He must have just literally spent his entire college career watching Derrick Henry highlights, because the guy runs with zero fear whatsoever. He was crushing Colts defenders yesterday. This one's a little bit scary if you're a Travis Etienne manager, right? Like Zach Moss and Chase Brown, it's like you didn't draft either one of them. Moss is going earlier. We didn't draft Zach Moss because you were like, yeah, this guy's going to dominate carries and touches, and he's awesome, and he's going to be a top 12 running back. You drafted him as RB27 to be the potential starter for much of the year for Cincinnati. You drafted Travis Etienne as a top 12 back because the idea was he would be the guy almost every single week. We've seen a whole lot more from Tank Bigsby, who I know ETN was a first-round pick, but Bigsby was a third-round pick last year as well. So it's not like this is some completely out-of-nowhere investment making his mark on Jacksonville's offense. He's a legit player, and they're going to rely upon him more and more in that power running game. And they're going to want to run the football a lot next Sunday because that Bears pass defense is no joke.
Yes. And we watched as Chuba Hubbard was able to take advantage of some of those open lanes that the Bears rushing defense allowed him to have. All right.
It's interesting. Just something worth just a little fun fact on the Jags here. They are playing in London next week, but I think it's Tottenham is where they
Tottenham
play
Stadium.
Against the Bears, but they're playing in London the week after as well. So they are the road team next week in Tottenham, then the home team at Wembley the following week. And that actually may relate a little bit to why we did not see Evan Engram in this game after all the positive talk about him progressing forward from the hamstring. Was they knew they were going to London for 2 weeks and maybe just being extra careful on that. I do expect Evan Engram to finally come back.
Well, with no Evan Engram, you saw Brian Thomas Jr. continue to do all the things that we have learned this kid can do. Second week with 20 or more fantasy points. He's been top 20 at the wide receiver position 3 times, top 30 4 times so far this year. So even in this offense that has struggled to start the season, it feels like Brian Thomas Jr. is a flex consideration moving forward with what we've seen from him so far this year.
We'll see how things change once Evan Engram is back in the lineup in terms of target distribution. But for now, they're going to 2 guys in the passing game. It's the 2 guys that deserve them, by the way.
Yep.
Brian Thomas Jr., who has that he just needs one to beat you, which he did yesterday.
Yes.
Right? He had that 87-yarder yesterday, whatever it was.
85, something like that.
85, yeah. Long 80-plus from Trevor Lawrence. That was a beautiful throw as well. And Christian Kirk, who's back, right? I mean, Christian Kirk playing a much more prominent role. He himself had a big 60-plus yard completion yesterday. So a touch concerned about the matchup in Week 6, and also obviously the fact that Evan Engram could be back relatively soon. But trending up for both of those players, Mike astutely noted that as we enter Monday Night Football, we are now in a situation with Brian Thomas Jr. as wide receiver 9 on the season. So rookies continue to do their thing so far early in the NFL season.
That's incredible. All right, let's move ahead and talk about the Colts here. Stephania, no Jonathan Taylor, and we did not see Anthony Richardson. I just want to ask you quickly before we talk about the performances, if you have any updates on these guys as far as it pertains to us moving forward.
Now, I think we're probably going to see Anthony Richardson back this coming week. I think there was just, in his case, Taylor's a little harder to project because it really depends how his ankle behaves, and we don't know how that's going to be. But he was certainly very optimistic despite ultimately missing this game. Anthony Richardson, it really was a soreness issue, and could he be effective and could he protect himself? And I think they just felt like they needed a little more time.
Well, if we do not have Jonathan Taylor field, Trey Sermon looked more than serviceable. It was not super efficient from a ground game perspective, but he did get a lot of work in the passing game, 6 catches for 25 yards, finished with over 18 fantasy points. If there is no JT, do you think that this happened because of the fact that it was Joe Flacco under center?
They're throwing the football a lot more. I just don't think the game script is going to be the same with Richardson, who I felt like, I thought he looked much better to begin last week, but they just aren't as likely to throw the football 50-plus times with Anthony Richardson under center. I thought Tyler Goodson looked better, on a per-touch basis, but it's going to be Trey Sermon as the most likely on-the-field first back if JT is out once again. Excuse me. So it'll probably be another top 25 consideration this week, which is kind of the term I throw around for running back when it's I think he's going to be the starter. I don't think he's a great player, but I think it's a decent situation. Yeah. And that's where I find him this week.
That makes sense. And it's kind of a bummer because I want to be super pumped about what happened for all these wide receivers. But you mentioned this on FF Now yesterday. You and Mike were talking about this. It feels like all of these pass catchers get a slight bump in production when it's Joe Flacco under center and not Anthony Richardson. And yesterday, it helped it was a shootout for what it's worth. But yesterday kind of proved that point that these guys just have more potential production with Flacco as their quarterback.
And nobody more so than Josh Downs, who had 12 targets yesterday. Back-to-back monster games for Josh Downs, who was a good player last year, and then he got hurt in training camp, so we didn't talk about him as much early on in the regular season, but he had 12 targets on 31 routes, more than Michael Pittman Jr., who had 8 targets on 39 routes and did find the end zone, so that was good. Both guys currently as top 20 wide receivers for the week. Pittman, I think, is trending up in general. We kind of reached the nadir early in the season. It's going to continue to go up. But Downs, a good
word.
That worked out well. But Josh Downs, I think, is a waiver wire ad for this week as well.
Yeah, I think Anthony Richardson showed us in that little glimpse before he had the hip/oblique injury that he had remembered that Michael Pittman was there for him.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we saw that, and I think that will get better when he returns.
I'm sorry that I brought up Alec Pierce on the show on Friday to be like, yeah, he's not going to continue to do stuff, right? And then he literally does Alec Pierce things again, which, like, if you can just get on the other side of the defense, just get him over the top.
Alec Pierce, if you've never played best ball,
Oh, he's perfect.
and you want to think about doing it next year,
Yes. Yes.
sit there and stare at Alec Pierce's
That's a
game
good-
logs
yeah.
throughout the year.
That's
You're
a
gonna be
good
like,
one.
oh wow, there's my best ball king, Alec Pierce. Because
Yep.
he's going to get you 20 or 0 with very few opportunities in between.
Yep, you're not wrong. All right, let's talk Packers and Rams.
We just shout out Joe Flacco, quarterback 4 for the week.
Who looked like
Packers and Rams here in
looked
this
like
one.
Benjamin Button scampering
Oh, wow.
down the field at some point. I mean,
All right. Tight end, Tucker Kraft. Holy smokes.
yeah, raise your hand if you added him this week in a bunch of leagues. Yeah, see?
It's nice when the obvious
Occasionally
one
we
pays
do.
off.
I know
Yeah.
it's occasionally we have one that we all love and it actually works out for us.
And it was quiet for a lot of that game yesterday.
He was.
Ooh, boy.
sweating it.
We were like, oh, man. I have a league in which I grabbed him, and I have Kyle Pitts as my normal starter. And I was like, Kyle Pitts, benching you. And then Kyle Pitts had a nice day on Thursday night.
Yes.
I really just do that? And so I was sweating that one until about the late third quarter yesterday.
Third quarter, he gets that nice long touchdown.
Long touchdown, 20% target share. They only threw the football 25 times
Yeah.
yesterday, which was a lower number than I anticipated. But just like he's a really good player. Third round pick. Luke Musgrave still dealing with that ankle injury. Obviously, no Christian Watson yesterday. No
Romeo Dobbs, yep.
We
So
did not talk about it on Friday, but Romeo Dobbs was suspended specifically for this game. Is that a thing that you think potentially like lingers
done.
forward?
No, I think it's over. In fact, Matt LaFleur talked about him welcoming him back to practice this week.
But likely back-to-back weeks as tight end 1 for Tucker Kraft. He had 24.8 fantasy points. So unless Juwan Johnson or Travis Kelce goes off tonight, which I suppose is possible, I don't know if anybody else has been the highest scoring player at his position in back-to-back weeks this season, perhaps excluding Brandon Aubrey. So really, really good. Another week from Tucker Kraft. Should be added on waivers if still available this week. And some of this is, again, the circumstances. But we told you that early in the season, Tucker Kraft was playing like 95% of the snaps for the Packers. Like even with Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft has been a huge, huge factor.
Did we jump the gun on Dontavian Wicks? Or was this just a game script thing?
Man,
that,
he had
like,
a lot. I mean, he was busy, a lot of targets,
had a
played
handful
ton.
of drops too, though, it felt like, which was not great.
Yeah, win them all, Daniel.
All right. On the other side, the Rams, is there anyone other than Kyron Williams to even talk about in this offense?
I will talk about the potential return of Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
Because the Rams have a bye next week, and if any team needed an early bye, it's probably the Rams. I don't think Puka Nacua will be ready to return yet. I think he's still a little ways off, but Cooper Kupp might be back in Week 7 when the Rams come back. So
That
just,
would be awesome.
Make your notes.
Yeah, would love that.
We'd love it.
All right, Stephania, this is
All right.
going to be your earmuffs part of the show.
Yeah. Oh.
Cardinals and 49ers. This one was surprising to me. Kyler's
You.
Wild game.
It was a wild game. I'll say this. Kyler saved fantasy managers with what he did with his legs because his passing game was not fantastic. I mean, it still feels like they're trying to figure out a rhythm here
was
for this
good,
Cardinals passing game.
Is he awesome? And
He
like
was
this is a
good.
reminder of like the upside of Kyler is attached to those legs, right? Like and 7 carries, 83 yards and a touchdown, including 50 yards and a touchdown on one run. So this is 2 excellent weeks for Kyler Murray with 3 not so great weeks, but just yesterday exemplifies why you believe he has weekly upside.
Yes.
And this 49ers defense, I got to tell you, like I thought it was a bigger impediment to opposing passing games and quarterbacks coming into the season. Hasn't been nearly as scary for whatever reason, whether it's just the injuries, whether it's just...
There's a lot of thoughts in 49ers land about what's happening with the defense, you know?
But Kyler was good. This
that
is the second dud game for Marvin Harrison Jr., which stinks, but there were 7 targets yesterday. So just a weird out-of-sync, to your point, Daniel, weird out-of-sync passing day for the most part, but more than offset by stingy defense, especially in the second half, and a great Kyler rushing day. Great Kyler rushing.
Marvin Harrison Jr. still has not topped 5 catches in a game, right? Like I would have expected that number to be much higher than that with how high of a pedigree this guy had coming out of college. I think it kind of just feels like while this passing game gets figured out, fantasy managers, we're never going to say you need to bench Marvin Harrison Jr.
No.
It's just going to be you got to ride the wave while this team figures things out.
A bit more so.
For the 49ers, let's say the positive thing. Brandon Ayuk finally showed up.
He did, in a big way.
In a
He
massive
had a really good day.
22.7 fantasy points, 12 targets, 8 catches for 147 yards. I mean, it feels like this was exactly what you needed to start having a little bit more confidence in the guy that you drafted to be a potential wide receiver, too, for your offense.
He's still vulnerable to the dud week, even if his chemistry is right with Brock Purdy, because it's this offense, right?
Yep.
Ayuk's big day yesterday coincided with a non-factor from Debo, right?
Oh, yeah.
The script could be flipped as soon as Thursday night against Seattle, and it could be Debo that goes off. So I don't think that this signals that, like, you immediately must expect that Brandon Ayuk goes ham every single week. But this was important. Like, the opportunities had been there in the first 4 weeks without the results. To get both the opportunities and the results yesterday, that can maybe build a bit more confidence for the player who, I don't care what they're saying publicly. I don't care about the fact that he got the new contract. If you think the vibes have been normal between Brandon Ayuk and the team up until yesterday, I think you're misreading things.
I
It
agree.
seemed like things have been a little bit off there.
Stephania, I want to ask you about 2 injuries.
Oh,
One of them, unfortunately, the kicker, Jake Moody, and then I want to get a CMC update if we potentially have one.
yeah. The Jake Moody thing was when he was trying to make a tackle on a kickoff return, he basically got his own leg trapped underneath him, and then the momentum of the guy he was trying to tackle took him backwards and spun his ankle outwards, which is the mechanism for a high ankle sprain. That's in fact what he is dealing with. He was in a walking boot after. Why does this matter so much? Well, he's one of the valuable kickers in fantasy. Jake Moody's pretty good and usually pretty consistent. And the Niners also play on Thursday night. So they will be seeking out new kickers in advance of Thursday. So for fantasy purposes, if this is a kicker you relied on, you need to take him out of your lineup and find somebody else for this week. As far as Christian McCaffrey, I don't want to spend too much time getting into it all. The fact is that nobody knows the timeline. There's been a lot put out there. It's still a very much evaluation, I would even say, on a day-to-day basis, internally. Week to week for us, for fantasy purposes, he's not going to be out there Thursday night. But after that, I think week to week, it's going to depend on how he responds to an increase in workload that is designed to get him back to playing shape.
Okay. Obviously, Jordan Mason going to continue to be the starting running back there until CMC comes back. I do kind of have a question about that, and maybe this is too early to ask this, Field, so we can table this if you want to for a little later. But is there a shot that even once CMC comes back, that you still see a little bit of a committee because Jordan Mason is just too legit to quit at this point?
Well, I'll answer that by saying I think they are going to be very mindful of how much work they give Christian McCaffrey when he first comes back, because how can you not after what's happened? Like, would you really want to be? We've seen Shanahan let McCaffrey go when he was trying to break a record last year, and people are wondering, why is he still in the game? Or when McCaffrey's really feeling it, they have let him go and be the workhorse. But given the way that this season began, I think they're going to be much more comfortable saying, we're just not going to let him have that much volume, and we're going to continue to rotate him with Jordan Mason.
Didn't Jordan Mason just break a CMC record? Most rushing yards to the first 5 games for the San Francisco 49ers, I believe.
Maybe.
Perhaps.
He's been great. He's been great.
He's been phenomenal. Tough day for Brock.
We'll continue to
gonna move on.
monitor all of these as we're moving forward. But it is very important to note, even though it is, I don't want to say just a kicker, but often guys that you don't think about in your fantasy lineup, if you do have Jake Moody, you need to go onto waivers and find someone that you would rather have this week. All right, let's talk about the Commanders and Browns. Holy smokes. The Commanders look awesome, and the Browns continue to look awful, unfortunately.
Do the Commanders quickly, and then I'll talk about the Browns.
All right, so Commanders, another double-digit carry game for Jaden Daniels. My big takeaway is that this guy, we talked with Chris Millhouse yesterday on FF Now, right? When he was setting his lineup, he had both Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels. If you are in a league where you drafted Jaden Daniels as a potential second quarterback, now is the time for you to figure out which one of those two quarterbacks do I want to move, because I think you're in a spot where you could potentially get something really nice for him. But, like, this kid is the real deal. I don't even know what to say about him.
Bad this week, and he's quarterback 12.
I know.
I mean, bad, not like he played bad. Like, he was bad relative to his own standards. He's
Fantasy
quarterback 12, right?
That bomb he threw to Terry McLaurin was
Oh, my
just
God.
beautiful.
He's so special. It's just so fun to watch. It's just so fun to watch. Commanders fans, so thrilled for you. You have, and I know that, we're only a little over a decade removed from feeling like they had, won the lottery with Robert Griffin III, and then things took a very rapid turn there. I think this one sticks around for a while.
I totally agree with you on that. And just for what it's worth, Brian Robinson Jr. came into this game banged up. It was more of a committee. You got all three of the running backs kind of involved in this one, in part because Brian Robinson Jr. wasn't 100%, but made it through the
Still
game.
gets you scores because he gets carries from inside the 5.
Yes, he
so,
does.
We'll take it because those are touchdown points.
And he did not get hurt in this one, so
Yep.
you're excited about what he can be
Yeah.
for next week. All right, let's talk about the Browns.
Yeah, let's just talk about, and there's not a fantasy
I
story.
do want to give you one injury update
okay.
before, though, which is that David Njoku, who makes his first return back after dealing with the high ankle sprain, ends up with a knee injury. So it was not the ankle, it was a knee injury, and he does have an MRI on the books for that. So
Brutal.
concerned about David Njoku's status for this week for sure.
I want to start by, as I begin this sort of thought, long-winded thought, perhaps, on the Browns, by acknowledging that I'm not convinced that Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, is the one that is making such decisions. But he comes out after the game yesterday and is naturally asked about whether the team plans to make a quarterback switch. And he said basically something to the effect of, guys, we're not changing quarterbacks. Don't bother asking. What are we doing here? Yeah. It's a sunk cost, right? The Browns made the worst trade in NFL history. It was the dumbest decision that has happened over the past 10 or 15 years. I get it. The Carolina Panthers traded all that for Bryce Young. You know what? Getting out of that contract with Bryce Young is going to hurt. This is franchise-shattering for Deshaun Watson.
Agreed.
Every single time that I watch this team play offense, I want to pull my hair out. And I like my hair a whole lot, all right? This offense has zero rhythm to it. It has zero explosiveness to it. It has zero identity to it whatsoever. There is nothing that works about this offense whatsoever. And you can tell me the offensive line has been hurt. That's fine. It's true. It's the case. Nick Chubb's not there. That's also true. Amari Cooper's let the quarterback down. All those things are true. The biggest problem, and there's no close second, is the quarterback has been terrible. Yep. This fan base deserves better, and I get it. You made a massive investment in Deshaun Watson. Maybe there's pride. Maybe that's the reason why. Maybe you're too stubborn to bench Deshaun Watson. Do yourself a favor and bench him, play Jameis Winston, and what's the worst thing that happens? Jameis goes out there and stinks, and you keep losing games because, by the way, you're 1-4. 1-4. You're one of like 4 teams in the NFL that has just one win so far. What is the harm in playing a different player? Because if he sucks, so what? Go back to Deshaun. Then you can justify your terrible investment.
Exactly.
What if he's good, though? Like, I just can't imagine.
Maybe
the
that's
locker
what
room
you're
shows
afraid
up.
to find
You know
out.
what?
You
But
know?
don't you want to save your job potentially?
Yeah.
All right? Like,
Well, if you're not totally.
I'm just, you know what? Don't you care about winning? Like, I know Kevin Stefanski's a damn good football coach. This guy's
Yeah,
been the
we've seen
two-time
it.
NFL Coach of the Year. I don't think it's a coaching problem.
Yeah.
I don't know this roster. Sometimes I think this roster gets a touch overinflated. I don't think it's a roster issue either. This team is better than 1-4. It's a quarterback issue. They stink because he stinks. And I'm just sick for Browns fans. It means that this offense has been totally neutered for fantasy purposes as well. Right? David Njoku, yes, he's a factor when he's healthy. Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, you really want to start those guys? This backfield, which obviously right now is without Nick Chubb, like, do you get fired up to start Jerome Ford? Probably not.
Nope.
What a disaster, man. Browns fans, you guys have been through a lot of crap over the past 30-plus years, but I'm feeling even worse for you guys than normal right now. Just saying something.
Yeah. I feel, especially with our guy, not Cole Keith, being a longtime Browns fan, whenever I see this, I just always think of Keith.
Yeah, I'm sure he's sick to his stomach right now. I know Keith's probably watching right now and probably saying amen.
Do you think there's anything to the rumors about, hey, this might be a spot where we look at moving Amari Cooper?
Yes, I think it's possible he gets traded.
Okay, so if you're going to trade Amari Cooper, what's the purpose of trading Amari Cooper? Because you're going to get something good for your franchise and you want to potentially move in the right direction. I mean, if you're thinking about moving potentially your best wide receiver, but then you're not thinking about also benching the quarterback that has been awful for you.
You can't apply rationale.
It doesn't
The
make
Browns
sense
pick
to my
quarterback.
brain. Like,
If Deshaun Watson was making $25 million per year, or if the Browns had just drafted Deshaun with their own pick and not traded 3 first-round picks, he would have been benched a while ago.
Is this the fact that they went through public relations hell and now they're just like digging their feet in and like you said, it's a pride situation? Because I don't.
Flacco gets dusted off the couch like twice a year and comes up and throws for like 350, like non-stop.
Joe Flacco did it,
And he's
for
still
them.
doing it.
He did it for them.
Yeah, and Deshaun hasn't thrown for 300 yards in a game once.
Like,
Once.
it's bad.
Not once with the Browns. 0 times. 0 times.
Listen, for everybody that is in Cleveland,
He says, by the way, amen is his quick summary.
I love it. I love it. For all of those Cleveland fans, let's put aside our Michigan and Ohio State rivalry. There is plenty of room for you in the den. Just come on over to Detroit. You can vault a Lions fan, and none of us are going to judge you, I promise.
Anyways, I know
And
that
at
was
least
kind of off
Lions
topic.
fans
but-
understand what
Hey,
it's
we
like
get
to
it.
be at the bottom and then vault to the top.
Hey, we started at the bottom, but
No, it does make you sad, but I sort of take the, from Fields' point, I think, because if you do make the switch, whoever's making that call, and Jameis Winston lights it up and everything changes, it forces you to confront the fact that you can never go back.
yeah.
If there's
And it
such
was a
level
total,
of denial that they can't already see it,
yeah.
whatever. I'm not even going to try to put myself in the brain of that franchise because it's been completely, whoever is making this call, to me, it's a completely senseless approach week in and week out.
Totally with you. All right, let's talk Raiders and Broncos. Denver Broncos really showed up in this one. I want to start with the Raiders, though. Brock Bowers. We've been waiting to see Brock Bowers return to that early season form that we had, especially because he plays at a position where we need to have somebody from the tight end position doing something for us. 23.7 fantasy points in a loss.
This might be the best. This is the best week for tight end so far.
Oh, yes.
Actually, the best
far,
week
right?
for every, except for running backs. It was a high-scoring week this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
But I really
touchdown
felt
week.
like tight ends.
Yeah.
I think they were tired of being bashed as a group, and
Correct.
they came out to show us something different, including Brock.
I want to ask
A
you
long
this.
touchdown, by the way, too early in that game.
Yep.
It was like a 57-yarder out of the chutes. They were up 10-0 in a hurry.
Right
were
away.
The Raiders, yeah.
Yep. They obviously had a quarterback change in this one. I want to throw this at you, Field. With Gardner Minshew, Brock Bowers, 6 targets, 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. With AOC, 5 targets for 3 catches and 17 yards. Do you care which quarterback is under center for Brock Bowers?
Still want it to be Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
I mean, not enough that I'm not going to start Brock Bowers, but I think Gardner Minshew, even with his mistakes that he makes, is a more fantasy-friendly quarterback.
I agree with that.
It's tough. Man, that's a tough watch with Aiden O'Connell under center.
It is not
That
great.
ball moves so slow and deliberately with him. Like, the process is just so slow.
We should have some Devontae Adams news. Potentially trade news may hit us at some time this week. Obviously, if that happens, we will let everyone know what it means for us in fantasy. But that is something that it does kind of feel like is definitively a when, not an if at this point.
Would agree.
So let's talk about the Broncos. Javonte Williams, 16.1 fantasy points, 3rd game with double-digit fantasy points. He feels like the definition of a low-end RB2 with bye weeks upon us, a low-end RB2 or flex play just because of how much work he's getting specifically in the passing game.
Yeah, he's trending up.
He really is.
Like, he's trending up. Like, he was on the, remember I had the I like list for me. It was like, I'm not like in love with Javonte Williams for this. I'm in like with him, and he's kind of trending back up. Like, he is the lead back for this offense. This offense is playing better of late. Not a great offense, but because their defense is so damn good, they can play this way.
No 100-yard touchdown on offense, but we'll take it from
That's
our
right.
defense.
Yeah.
I legitimately, so yeah, trending up on Javonte. Like, good to see him kind of settled in as like, I used the term earlier, like top 25-ish back.
Yep.
Yeah, starting to play better. I mean, by the eyeball test too. I still go back to the injury that he came back from last year, which was much more significant than I think people give him credit for. That multi-ligament knee injury that he did not want to miss time, came back and powered through it, but he has not been as explosive a player as he was before the injury. He was a physical runner before that. It's hard to get that back. I think if you watch him play, you're starting to see him evolve back, I think, to the player that he once was. So I think those two go hand in hand, right? That part of the reason we're seeing more productivity out of him is physically he's healthier and getting more confident in his legs.
He's been way more effective in the passing game than Jaleel McLaughlin, too. 20 targets for 17 receptions and 130 yards so far this year. McLaughlin, 10 targets for 10 receptions and 11 yards. 130 yards to 11 yards between these two running backs in the passing game. So he has been much more efficient, in spite of the fact that McLaughlin 10 targets, 11 yards is the one that has a receiving touchdown, which is like
which
just defies.
look,
Hilarious,
it
right?
saved some of us. So
Yeah,
that-
They're going to use
that'd
the
be
backs in the
critical.
passing
Right.
game a lot because A, Sean Payton, B, Bo Nix. That's what he's going to do. It's
Yep.
short area stuff.
These Broncos uniforms, Field Yates, you want to say anything about them?
They're on the unbelievably awesome uniforms lists. Like I'm trying to think of the Mount Rushmore of like best NFL unis of the throwbacks. Some that come to mind include the Bucks creamsicles, elite, the Seahawks, elite, Patriots Reds, elite. You know, I'm still a sucker always for the Chiefs and the Raiders and the traditional ones that never change. The Broncos are up there as well. I thought the 49ers throwbacks are
I was
crispy
waiting
and-
for you to say because
terrific.
everybody's going to call me a homer, but man, those uniforms are sharp.
Those are some that come to mind for me that I really, really love. But yes, I want the Broncos to make these permanent because I know they just modified their uniforms. They're traditional uniforms, but I think they have a massive upgrade sitting there. Those would do numbers. And Pat Surtain II, I see you, baby.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I just,
Awesome.
he's so awesome.
Dude is so good at football.
So awesome.
So good at football. Easily a top, probably 65 cornerback in the NFL. All right. That's a group chat thing. Don't worry about it. Let's talk about Giants and Seahawks. Congratulations to the New York football Giants.
What a damn win.
Seriously. I mean, gutty win to be able to pull this out without their superstar wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. Obviously missed this one because of the concussion. And everyone else stepped up. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson did exactly what we thought Wan'Dale Robinson would do.
Yeah.
It was really Darius Slayton that really took the mantle here and showed us something. There's still something left in the tank with Darius Slayton.
Yeah, Slayton's one of those guys that's going to be a hard one to ever quit fully, right? Because he's big and he's really fast. And Daniel Jones not afraid to push the football down the field. 4 straight solid games for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, you know.
Is he the best quarterback in New York right now?
No.
That's where we've gotten to.
Why are you
Daniel
doing
Jones
that?
or Aaron Rodgers.
are you
Fantasy
doing
or
that?
for real life? 'Cause for fantasy, it might be a conversation.
Real life, they're both 2 and 3 for what it's worth. Like they got the exact same record. So, but yeah, this has been, I think, a really. I don't know what to say about it from a fantasy perspective. Although Tyrone Tracy did look nice. Obviously,
Looked
we didn't have
excellent.
Yeah,
Devin
no
Singletary in
Devin
this one either.
Singletary. Good for him.
So that was
He
really
looked
great.
great. 18 carries for 129 yards. Just 1 catch yesterday. Interestingly enough, Eric Gray had 3 catches for 50 yards. And Eric Gray also got all the goal line work on this early drive.
I
Now,
didn't love that.
I thought, and Giants fans I think would agree, he cracked the goal line and scored.
I agree with that.
Instead, it was ruled a fumble that was returned 102 yards for a touchdown. I don't know if Eric Gray went into punishment after that, but it ended up being a big benefit for Tyrone
Yeah.
Tracy.
I've got a question, and you might not be able to answer it. Neither of you may be able to answer this.
Okay.
But I thought in the NFL this year, one of the things that we did is we got rid of the chain gang when we're trying to look at first down lines. We now have like that over-the-air measurement of did the ball cross a certain threshold or not. How can we not do that same thing with the ball when we're talking about the goal line? What am I missing where the goal line is different than a regular first down marker?
But Belichick he's been talking, he's like, we have billions of dollars and we can't put a sky cam, or we can't put a cam right on the goal on the pylon because how many times does this come up, right? You're like, oh, well, like that guy, he may have reached across the plane, but our best angle is from, 100 yards away behind it.
At
That
an
seems-
angle rather than, it's so.
Yeah, so anyways, the only reason I mentioned that is I don't know, and Devin Singletary did practice in a limited capacity on Friday, so I don't want to say that he is definitely going to miss week 6. But if he does, I wonder if the plan was for Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy to be a bit more balanced, and that will be the plan again next week, or if they'll say, did you see how well this kid played? Because this kid played so well that it's going to be the Tyrone Tracy show, not just until Devin Singletary returns, but maybe in larger part when Devin Singletary does return. He was too good yesterday to keep him off the field.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Only thing that you wish is that in these situations where you have basically all rushing yardage, your fantasy points don't look as good as your actual NFL day does because of that. 'Cause if you
14
get-
fantasy points, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and
No
that's it
touchdown
for a
and just
guy.
one
Like,
carry for
one
him.
touchdown would have been great. A couple
One
of catches
receiving
in the
yard.
passing game would have made it feel like it was an even better day. But don't just look at the box score or that fantasy point thing and not think that he had an awesome day. All right, let's talk one more game. Patriots and Dolphins. We can be quick on this one. Ramondre Stevenson responded to that benching.
Yeah.
No fumbles, 19.2 fantasy points, Field Yates. He still feels like the only Patriot that you can consider in fantasy.
Unfortunately, maybe not next week. He played exactly half the snaps for Mondre, but left the game with an ankle injury late. It was late, so we didn't even get an announcement from the team of what's going on, but he was helped off the field with multiple staffers. Sounds like an ankle injury. Looked like ankle, lower leg. We'll get Probably more information at some point here soon. But if he's out, obviously it would be the Antonio Gibson show once again. But Ramondre, yes, he took his demotion very well and scored a 33-yard touchdown on his second snap of the game.
Poor guy. That's his reward.
Yeah.
You know, so you get more snaps, more carries, more exposure. You have an injury.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
On the
They're a
other
mess. They're a mess.
Yeah.
They're a mess. Drake May needs to play right now.
Didn't I see something from Mike Reese earlier this morning talking about how there was some of the language that Gerard Mayo used in his press conference maybe was a little lighter?
Time is coming. The time is coming.
Okay.
And you can make the case, well, hey, you really want to put that guy behind that offensive line? Okay, so then the alternative is you just concede you're going 1-16 this year.
Yep.
They're not the Dolphins with their freaking ninth string quarterback. You can't beat them. Like, they're a mess right now. I don't know who needs a quarterback change more, the Patriots or the Browns, but they both need a quarterback change in a desperate way.
Dolphins on their fourth quarterback that has played so far this year, and they lost Devon Achane.
They lost Devon Achane, 3 for 18 rushing, negative yard receiving, ends up leaving with a concussion, which, it's a 4-letter word down in Miami right now. It's really tough for them.
Yeah.
It is really tough. Yeah, with Achane, this concussion, I don't know that he's had one in his NFL career. I think, and this is not, maybe Stephania will disagree with me vehemently on this assessment. One of the question marks surrounding Devon Achane coming into the NFL is what kind of workload can a 165-pound running back withstand? And unfortunately, early in his career, one of the themes that has followed him has been, in the lineup and dominant in times, and then often out of the lineup too, because you're 165 pounds, like, the smallest defensive lineman is like 120 pounds bigger than you. It's just different than a guy who might be built like a Ford truck.
Yeah, I mean, he's acutely aware of the reputation, and during training camp when I talked to him, I mean, it's a legit question, right? Is how do you, if you are going to be the one who gets more work in this backfield, how do you help ensure that you stay on the field? And he's doing all the right things. You can't change your build or your size, but you can do everything you can to try and be as strong and as quick and learn the tricks about trying to avoid things that put you in a position where you're more at risk. But you play the riskiest position on the field in terms of everybody trying to bring you down at once, the number of hits you take, whether you're carrying the ball or not, because you've also got to be in there to block at times. And we've seen him kind of get run over in a couple of those situations. So it's not. I don't disagree with the concept. It's just the player's going to do all they can to try and protect themselves. But
I would just say that I raised the point in the discussion of like what the ceiling is for Devon Achane as we're talking about him every year in the preseason rankings, right? Mm-hmm. You got healthy Devon Achane for 17 games with a fully functioning Dolphins offense, he'll be a top 5 running back.
Right.
But is he as equipped to stand the test of time every season as other backs with sturdier builds? To me, I think that's a fair, when we get into next preseason, and by the way, it's still week 5, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, a fair thing to bring up.
And shout out to Raheem Mostert, who, by the way, is not 100%, had a really tough chest injury early in the season. And look what he carries the ball 19 times, gets 80 yards, has a couple of passes that he caught, and still gets you, I mean, it's only 11.8, but it's still double-digit fantasy points from Raheem Mostert. So they're trying to hold each other together with duct tape and glue. And so,
yeah,
Jalen Wright played a big role yesterday as well. Wouldn't
it's nice
surprise
to
me.
see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
we'll talk
they
about
have a
him on
bye.
the waiver wire show.
Yep. Yeah, they have a bye this week. So just a reminder: Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, and Vikings go into a bye this week in Week 6.
Field, we already mentioned that Jalen Waddle is basically outside of our starting radar at this point. Do you think Tyreek Hill, who currently on the week is wide receiver 29 with Monday Night Football still left to play, I mean, there's a really high chance he finishes outside the top 30 at the position. He was outside the top 50 last
touchdowns. Yeah, I had him as wide receiver 27 this week. That was my.
So you're pretty close to where he was.
Yeah.
He's a flex consideration right now, and the good news is Tua could be back as soon as week 8. So week 7, you got to get through one more game, but they are a complete. They're a shell of their current selves without Tua.
For what it's worth, we got a Monday Night Football game tonight. Obviously, Kansas City Chiefs are going to play in this one. My big concern is that I've been talking very poorly about Patrick Mahomes, and I need about 30 points from him in one of my games. So I don't know how this is going to work out.
I don't think he's heard you. My guess is he's kind of been preoccupied
think so?
with other things. Yeah.
You think he's been more preoccupied with the idea that Taylor Swift didn't go to Travis Kelce's birthday party?
I think she does have another tour leg coming up.
You're right.
So we can stop the guy. I think he's preoccupied. Yeah, in a good way, because now it's him and Travis.
That's right.
And
That's
get
right.
Travis the ball more, and we'll all be happy.
A big day for the Chiefs, who, of course, have the chance to go to 5-0 tonight. But also, there's a chance by the time you're listening to this that we have some sort of update on Rashee Rice,
Yes.
Yep.
who's scheduled for a procedure at some point today down in Dallas.
All right. With that being said, we love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Always a fun show on Monday. Don't forget today's show is presented by Boost Mobile. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. Have fun watching Monday Night Football, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
At 30, Patrick, you can do it.
Yeah, give me 30. All I need is 30, Patrick.